All right, everybody, welcome into another episode of GC Live, closing out your week here on Friday. Wes Mitchell here, Chris Clark talking Gamecock football as we wrap up SEC Media Day and maybe dive into the schedule a little bit. Overall, I've been doing a breakdown on Gamecock Central. Hopefully, you've been checking those out game by game. May get into that a little bit. We'll get into some reactions for Media Day. We'll react to the new jerseys that were released, sort of unveiled yesterday, and maybe, depending on our amount of time, dive into another position group as we sort of close out the offseason here very, very soon. Shout out our first chatter today, Garnet Yardbird, a loyal listener and watcher here of the show. Appreciate you, man. And before we dive into any of that, let me tell you about a couple of great sponsors. First, our guy, Clint Hammond. CMG Home Loans, our presenting sponsor here for several years. ClintHammond.com, 803-422-6797, and MLS number 71597. As we always tell you, you may not be in the market for a new home now. One day you may be. If you are at that point now or in the future, all we ask is that you give Clint a chance to earn your business. And also, here's the thing, if home ownership is like a goal of yours, maybe that's something that's abstract right now and you want to make it real, call up Clint, sit down with him. He will give you the exact numbers, man. Like, he will break it down for you. This is how much you can expect to pay per month. This is how much you're going to need for a down payment. This is how much you need to feel good about not being house poor or whatever in terms of what your salary and your savings are. He will break all that down for you and make it very, very just easy to kind of process. So if any of that sounds of interest to you, hit up Clint, 803-422-6797.
And just like Clint, for the mortgages, you can check out our friends over at Ferry Chevrolet if you're in the market or think you may be in the market for a new or used vehicle. That's ferrychevrolet.com, F-A-I-R-E-Y, ferrychevrolet.com, or 803-937-4531. They've been around since 1926. They're conveniently located in Orangeburg. So if you're in Columbia, if you're in Charleston, well worth a visit to go check out the local service over at Ferry Chevrolet. They're still led by a fourth-generation dealer in Joseph Ferry. You can, again, check out their website at ferrychevrolet.com. You can see their new and used inventory, and you can check out their financing options and so much more. That's the best place to start, ferrychevrolet.com. If you prefer the phone, hit them at 803-937-4531.
Shout out to Jeremy as well there on our chat box here, and everybody else who's not commenting, who's joined us here early on, shout out to you as well. And Chris, as SEC Media Days has come to a close, also something I did not tease, maybe we need to hit right off the bat real quick, the official poll from the SEC Media, which, by the way, let me just say, is always inaccurate. Like, I don't know if it's ever been like to a T accurate for a preseason in the history of the poll. It means absolutely nothing. It's never been right, but it does exist, and it does give us something to talk about, and it gives us something to complain about. I don't even care about the media poll in terms of the teams. It is what it is. South Carolina was picked 11th, which, if you listen to the radio show today, one of Tyler Head's buy or sell questions for us was, will South Carolina be in the top half or the bottom half of the media's projections, buy or sell? Chris, I think you sold as well, right?
I did.
I thought that was honestly a pretty easy sell. Like, there's not a lot of hype for this South Carolina team from an SEC standpoint right now. And you know what? Frankly, why should there be? 4-win season last year. The SEC media, these guys all have local, for the most part, local schools they're covering. It's just like if you ask me to tell somebody about the Missouri roster. Okay. I don't know anything about Missouri roster. So
Right.
if you ask, especially if you ask another SEC writer who writes for a program that does not play South Carolina this year, they're not going to be able to tell you anything. And there's 40 new players. So everybody goes off of what happened last year. They see, South Carolina's got some superstars back. They won 4 games last year. I'm gonna, frankly, them being 11th. I mean, this is a deep league, dude. Like you could be, I don't know about 11th, but you could be 8th and be a pretty good football team. You know what
Yep.
I'm saying? Like it really could come down to your schedule and who you had to play that year between 8th or like 4th or 5th. So, 11th really did not surprise me. I will say this, putting Florida ahead of South Carolina with a brand new coach, some uncertainty at quarterback. That feel, and I'm gonna say it feels disrespectful, even though it's not like one guy or girl is putting together these lists. It's a compilation, right? So, but that does feel a little bit disrespectful. Okay, what has Florida done for you to think they should be higher than South Carolina at this point?
Yeah.
And but that's kind of where I am, Chris. Like, this is some good. It's some somewhat good. I don't even know if it's good. This is some decent off-season fodder for conversation. Not sure it really matters remotely at all.
It matters not a bit, and I think we even saw some of this last year, Wes, not even necessarily with the media poll. We saw it kind of with the preseason rankings where, frankly, some Gamecock fans were like, we probably should be ranked higher, and what was South Carolina, 11, 13? On the other side, a lot of people were sitting around, and I think I was in this category like, oh, that's a little high. Certainly didn't think South Carolina would be 4-8, right? But I think a couple of things in play. Number one, you've probably more than two things. You've got that local kind of factor that you're talking about, where if you ask me, Missouri's a great example. Where do you slot Missouri? Dude, I don't know. I don't know if they're 7. I don't know if they're 12. I don't know if they're 14. I don't know enough about the roster. These things are hard enough to predict, even when you didn't used to have all of this roster turnover and all of this parity, frankly, in the league that you have year in and year out. I think, yes, a lot of it is looking back at, hey, this team did this last year. That's why they won't be very good this year. We saw this in South Carolina after the 2023 season. They were 5-7. They lost their two best players in Spencer Rattler and Xavier Leggett. People said, they won't be very good. They're not going to be ranked preseason. They're not going to be picked high in the league. That team ended up being on the cusp of the college football playoff. And I think you pointed out during the radio show, Wes, that was still good for 6th in the league. So to your point, you can be 6th in the league, you can be 8th in the league, and still be a pretty darn good team. And then, but on the other hand, you've got what you just mentioned with Florida. Like, yes, I think we all recognize Florida underachieved, which is why Billy Napier is no longer there and John Sumrall is now their head coach. They've got a good bit of talent on that team, which is, I think, one reason why we've been talking about Florida this offseason, and that, hey, this is probably a difficult game for the Gamecocks. They got to go on the road to the Swamp. Yes, they're playing a team with a first-year head coach. They're also playing a team that has always had talent. Even when Florida has not been a good program, you never look at them and go, man, they're just totally talent deficient. There's just not a roster. That hasn't been as much the issue there. So all in all, this is not something to get, and I don't think fans are super worked up about it. If it were the opposite, if South Carolina had gone 9-3 last year, and then they're ranked 11th this year, you would see a lot more people upset about the disrespect or whatnot. I think most fans understand you didn't do a lot last year. There's certainly confidence in the building. I think even fans have gained some confidence that this could be a bounce back year. It's not going to be reflected in the poll, and that's fine. It doesn't really matter at the end of the day where you're ranked preseason, where the media ranks you, how many guys make all SEC preseason. What matters is how many guys are making all SEC after the season and where you ranked after the season. Those are the metrics that actually matter.
Yeah, and I do feel like there are fans who are pretty reactive to some of this stuff. A lot of it last year, you saw a few people who didn't have South Carolina in the top 25 preseason just get hammered on social media about it. And then, I think this year you actually see some people, if there's something positive out there about South Carolina, will hammer somebody talking about, well, what about last season makes you think that it's going to be different this season. And it's like, well, you do go play the games, right? Like, to me, there is a huge difference between going into a season and you're just going, man, on paper, I just do not see it. I do not see a path. You know what I'm saying? There are some years where you're going, if this team is successful, whatever your version of successful is, it would be a massive surprise to a lot of people. And then there are other seasons you may go into and you go, yeah, okay, I get it. It was 4 wins last year, but I can see a path. Like it was close enough last year. And I think you are seeing, we had Jake Crane on, who I think does to be trying to follow everybody, man. It is hard in 2026, as much roster turnover as there is. And, I think Jake does a good job. When he says stuff, I listen. And when Jake says, look, man, like this team is not that far off. How different is it if, and I use the word lightly, fixed, if you can have somewhat fixed the O-line play and you've somewhat fixed the offensive coordinator system or situation, I should say, how different could that mean for South Carolina with some of the guys that you do bring back? I think there's an opportunity here. Obviously, now you're going to be in a bunch of close games, man. What you're going to be breaking in another new kicker. So how many games literally could just come down to, does that new kicker make his kicks or not? You never. That is why we watch, is because this stuff is not written in stone. It's not. If you go into a season with a chance, which I think South Carolina does, then a lot of it's going to depend on that very moment, man. Literally, I mean, does a gust of wind? I swear to you, and I never said this at the time, Chris, because it would have just not played well at all. When Herrera missed that field goal against LSU, I swear on my life, standing in the stadium, that a big old gust of wind started right before they snapped that ball. But I'm only bringing that up as a point, bro. You never know. You don't know when a ball's going to hit a rock or something. You know what I'm saying? Like, stuff happens. So,
Yeah.
there's. I'm excited to find out. I'm hoping like we're getting ever closer to the point we actually start to find out. I tell you where I do have an issue. And by the way, for those who have not seen it, for those who have not cared to see it, this is not where I have an issue, but just throwing this out there. Georgia won, according to the SEC media. Texas 2. I actually, to be honest, I thought that might be flipped. I thought it would maybe Texas 1, Georgia 2. Georgia 1, Texas 2. Ole Miss 3 getting a huge benefit of the doubt with a brand new head coach. I know what happened last year. I know they have the quarterback back. Don't get me wrong. That is a huge benefit of the doubt for a true first-year head coach. I will maintain, Chris, it's way, way, way different to take a team with momentum that already has senior leadership, already has the system in place. Hey, man, we need you to just take what's happening and keep it rolling at the end of the season versus going into the 1,000 micro decisions you have to make every single week as a head football coach. You're third in the league. That is some strong faith in Pete Golding. Over a Texas A&M program, they're ahead of Lane. They're ahead of LSU and Lane Kiffin. Alabama 6. I'm getting off course from what I was about to say, but I want to get your reaction before I go back to what I was going to say, Chris. Oklahoma 7, Tennessee 8, Florida 9, Missouri 10, South Carolina 11, Auburn, Vanderbilt, Kentucky, Mississippi State, and Arkansas. Anything about that sounds just completely off to you?
Not really. I think, bottom of the table, when you get from 12 to 16, like, I think you could have situated those anyway, and I don't think any of them would have been super shocking. I did wonder, would LSU, even though Lane has been trying to downplay LSU a little bit, would they be a little bit higher? Number 5, Wes, I mean,
Still pretty strong.
That's pretty strong. That's, last year, that's good enough to get you into the college football playoff. You're a college football playoff team. You've had a pretty good year in my book. I wondered if Oklahoma would be a little bit higher, say over Alabama. Personally, I might go there. I might personally put Oklahoma over Bama. Obviously wondered about Georgia and Texas. I thought Texas would be voted number one. I'm not shocked by any means it's Georgia. I'm with you on the Ole Miss thing. Ole Miss is certainly getting some juice off of what happened last season. That is a lot of faith in Pete Golding. Now, they had a really good year last year. They've got, yes, they lost some dudes to LSU and Lane. They also got some really good dudes back on that roster. Texas A&M, really good year last year. I kind of wondered, would they flip? Would Texas A&M be number 3, maybe even number 2? But look, I think it just illustrates exactly what you said to open. It's a good league. There's a lot of really good teams in there. And even, you kind of get in the top half. It's like any of these teams can beat anybody, especially when you're looking at like 1 through 8. Is there a huge gap between Georgia and Oklahoma this year? I don't know. Or Texas and Oklahoma? We'll get to see. But I think it's just a really deep league. And so, being at number 5, number 6, you're still projected as a really, really good team.
Well, and I think, man, the question now becomes too, not from a South Carolina standpoint, but from a league standpoint. We know there's some depth here. We know everybody's going to beat up on everybody. I still think going to a 9-game schedule, absolutely horrendous decision. Terrible decision. Don't like it at all. And according to Eli Drinkowitz, the coaches may feel the same way.
Yep.
But you're going to beat up on each other. Is there going to be a team or two from this bunch that the cream can rise to the top? And, I mean, dude, life comes at you fast. Things change quickly and can match up with the Big Ten. Like, the Big Ten may not have had as much depth as the SEC, but those top 2 or 3 schools in the Big Ten the last couple of years, and certainly the top team in the Big Ten the last few years, has been the best team in the country. And those top 2 or 3 have been as good as anybody in the country. So if Texas is the best team in this league, I think they might have the best roster. We'll see. If Georgia is the best team, if A&M is the best team, whoever it may be, are they good enough to be one of the elite? I'm not talking about great. I'm talking about elite national championship quality team. I think is another question. But, Chris, the thing I was getting to earlier, because we're already at the 17-minute mark and we've just been BSing. How is Vakari Swain not one of your returners on the preseason SEC list? And granted, I see, if you go to Phil Steele, pretty sure he does kickoff return and punt return. He separates it. SEC does return specialist. No offense to any of these other kids, but Vakari, I don't think this is a homer take. Vakari, absolutely. 3 touchdowns for, as a punt returner last year. Dynamic every time he touches the football. No way in this world that dude should not be. That's my biggest gripe, with this. And I get it. Like with offensive linemen and stuff, it's like, it's not going to be accurate, man. People aren't sitting there grading freaking offensive linemen for their all SEC list. But you saw highlights all last year of Vakari returning 3 punts for touchdowns. I don't see how that doesn't automatically get you in this list. Again, not that it matters, but that's just another example to me of how poor these lists are.
That one was a big gripe, and maybe you can go, split hairs between some other guys, but that one seemed pretty obvious. And look, the guys that made the list are really good. But here's a stat that'll drive it home. Vakari Swain had more returns for a touchdown last year. He actually had the same number as all 3 of the other guys that made the list throughout their entire careers combined. The 3 guys on that list have a total of 3 return touchdowns in their career. Now, Ryan Niblett, who, if you had told me, Wes, Ryan Niblett from
Niblett's good.
Is the guy. Like, he's first team. I'm like, okay, I get it. He had 2 returns for a touchdown last year. Isaiah Sategna, who started at Arkansas and was at Oklahoma last year, he has a punt return touchdown in his career. It was in 2023 at Arkansas. He also returned some kicks in 2023 at Arkansas. Last year, according to the game log I'm looking at, he didn't have kick returns. He just had punt returns. And then you go to Vernell Brown at Florida, also a player I really like. I think he's really good. Last season, he had 12 punt returns for 140 yards. Not 3 touchdowns, not 2 touchdowns, not 1 touchdown. So it's just curious because you look at Bakari Swain and what he did last year. You know, he had 19 returns, 302 yards, 15.9 yard average, and 3 punt return touchdowns, which was an FBS leader, not just SEC, FBS leader. So that one was really kind of hard to square. Wes, did he get dinged for just playing on a 4-8 team? Like, I don't really know. Florida didn't tear it up either, but the guy that got picked from Florida, statistically, there's a huge difference between
Did he return kicks as well?
Vernell Brown.
That was what I was trying to figure because you're combining them, which Vakari didn't return kicks.
Vernell Brown had 7 kick returns last year for a 17.4 yard average, no touchdowns. I mean, solid, but nothing. You know, it's almost like maybe you get some extra points for that, but there were no scores. There were no.
Yeah, I don't know how you ding a guy for their team being 4-8 when we're talking about a preseason list for this year. You know what I'm saying? Like, I know guys get dinged postseason for like a year that just happened. It's like a tiebreaker almost. Like, oh, your team was good, yours wasn't. We're going to go with the team that was good. It happens all the time with quarterbacks, and maybe that's even a little bit more valid than it would be for a punt returner. But anyway, maybe a little fuel to the fire for a guy Vakari this year. Hey, if you're Smiley, you're doing everything you can to find new ways to get that guy in space. An absolute weapon for South Carolina is Vakari Swain. That was my biggest issue with the whole thing. The teams, the order, the favorites don't care whatsoever. But man, a guy that had 3 punt returns for touchdowns last year, he deserves to be on the list, man. Pretty big miss there by our SEC media brethren there, in my opinion. Let's go to a positive, kind of just fun, quick topic, man. The debut of the jerseys came out with a video yesterday, and man, I think they look fantastic, Chris. I really do. We knew they were going to be very similar. They there's been mock-ups. There are kind of, I guess you would call replica jerseys, in stores. We already kind of knew what they were going to look like. And Donati told us and others, like, hey, it's not going to be this massive rebrand or remix in terms of what we're doing with the jerseys this year for now. But I was told, Chris, when I was asking about the garnet color to someone, like this would have been, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks ago, that, hey, we being South Carolina, we truly believe people are going to love these jerseys because they're very similar, but they just pop a little bit different, pop a little bit more. That was kind of my reaction, dude. Like, I feel like they look great. Jerseys always look completely different once you see them on a human with the pads, with the helmet. To me, I've never looked at a jersey hanging on a rack, on a hanger. It doesn't do much for you. Seeing it on an actual athlete and what it's going to look like on game day, you get an actual vibe for what that looks like. I can't. I have no notes. Like I think they're pretty freaking strong for a first Nike jersey for South Carolina.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, based on everything we had been told and reported, that South Carolina wasn't going to come out year one with Nike with, a bunch of crazy uniforms and an alternate. Although, Wes, it is, keep in mind for the future, it's built into South Carolina's Nike contract for Nike to rebuild that closet, and there's an option for an alternate uniform in there. So curious as to what maybe they decide to do down the road with that. But I was curious to get the first look of, like, here's what it looks like on a player in photos, in videos. I agree. I think they look great. I was curious of what fans would think because we've all been following it. With the Nike release, there's been a lot of opinions on the colors, or not even just the color, like the name of the color and all these different things. So I was curious, hey, what are fans going to think? Or even if I like them, what does the fan base think? Wes, from what I've seen, man, on Gamecock Central and on social, it seems like people, and I'm sure this is not every person because you're not going to find 100% agreement on anything in life. It seems like the fan base is really digging these new uniforms.
Yeah, I agree. Little tease at the end, right? Little tease at the end on the black helmet. You know what might the black uniforms look like, and definitely appears to be a glossy black helmet on the way, which I think is a cool way to just introduce something a little bit new, a little bit different, spice it up without it being anything too over the top, too crazy. And I will say this, dude. Now, granted, again, because you didn't just go completely off the rails and say we're gonna just start over, right? If you had started over, even if they were pretty good, I think you would have gotten mixed reactions. Like, let's be honest, anytime you do something creative, artsy, any type of design or brand, people are gonna have opinions, man. So by sort of staying, you colored within the lines with this one, right? By doing that, you were not going to get as strong of a reaction, I think. But I'll say this, dude. Look at the reaction from the Georgia Tech fans and from the national folks about the Georgia Tech uniforms. When you go to a new brand, it's not always smooth. There's always this conversation about the color. Did they get this right? And I get it. Yeah, some of the the shirts in the stores. Yeah, it is a different shade. I'm not telling you it's not, but I think I really have not seen hardly anybody watch that video and say I hate it. There's been a little different opinions on Austin making the point they took out the circle, the white circle on the garnet helmets. There's actually been a lot of people that have said, hey, I'm glad they got rid of that. There's been some people like, hey, I kind of like that. That was a little bit of a staple. Other than that, it's been pretty positive. Chris, I like that the logo on the helmet appears to be much bigger.
It does. It does. Yeah, a lot of people were talking about that, getting rid of kind of the circle, the logo on the helmet. I think the helmets look great. The helmets really pop to me. So I thought that was a good, tweak, I guess is probably the best word for it. And at what point, Wes, do they, I assume if they tease it, we probably get to see the glossy black helmet this season. Seems like they wouldn't tease it if it's like a, hey, wait a couple years type of thing. But at what point do we see that thing? Interesting.
Yeah, I will say this. I have a pretty good feeling we will see a video involving the black uniforms fairly soon. That would just be my guess before the season. It would be on brand. It would be on track. You put this out. You do the little Marvel, almost felt like a post movie credit scene, just to tease everybody a little bit. Then you put the video out later on at some point when we need something else to get us ready. But Chris, I will say this. Those on the video version, you can see it right now. Did this not feel a little bit like an old school Justin King video? Had those vibes, right?
Yeah, the transitions, the old battle armor videos that we used to see. Definitely a little bit of an old school flair. Awesome video. Got people ready for the season too.
Yeah, it did. All right, I'm gonna let this play, Chris. Anything from SEC media days, and I know Jack and Kendall were on yesterday. Kind of, I don't want to spend an hour on that, but was there any takeaways? Because you and I haven't been on here since all that happened that you thought were like pretty newsworthy from this week for Carolina, not SEC wide, just locally.
Yeah, I mean, locally, look, there's not much to Shane Beamer obviously was going to have to give his thoughts or an update rather on Dylan Stewart and Jakari Speak, and those seem, pretty positive. He said Dylan Stewart's going to take another, step forward in his rehab and recovery next week, and then that Peak is already running around, so that certainly seems positive. I'll actually steal one from you, Wes. And I'll let you talk about this more, so I don't actually steal it from you. But I thought that Nick Harbor's, just day out there was really good, because I thought he was a really good mix of like insight into route running, into Lenore Sellers, into the new offense. Making jokes about his dad, who was on the U.S. men's national team, telling him he was too uncoordinated to play soccer, dropping some other jokes in there. Like, I thought it was a perfect, like, Nick Harbor performance, and just really showed his personality, and it kind of came through.
Yeah, and I mean, Chris, not that he was like in a shell before, but I do think we have seen him during his time at South Carolina. We've got to know him, and I don't mean us like personally. I just mean like the fan base, the media, like everybody's got to know a little bit more about what he is all about during his time here. He's always been a good talker. He's always been a willing talker, but I do think a little bit of that sense of humor has come out, and just gave some really insightful answers. I love the fact that they were asking him about coming back, and part of it was, hey, Lenoris is my guy, and part of it was I didn't want to go elsewhere and play with a different quarterback, and why not try to see this thing through together, which, as we know, is not always the case in college football these days. I think you got to respect that, man. I think if those two dudes go out and have a big year this year, and their final year at South Carolina, and they win more games, and they both put up big numbers, how much more they're going to be appreciated, because they did see it through and were at South Carolina the entire their entire college eligibility. And just for him to kind of go to bat for Lenoris a little bit, that's my quarterback. I'm a Gamecock for life. All those different things I think went a long way. And even just some of the technical detail, though, about a lot of us, it's very easy, Chris, to be like, hey, why don't you run better routes? Well, think about just the dynamics of being 6'5" and running as fast as he is and does. And, I believe he did in one interview. It might have been with Heath Klein, maybe someone else. He had a great interview with Heath. I know that. The hardest route for Lenoris to run, the comeback route. You're like, okay, what's so hard about that? Well, think about how of a long strider he is. And you're trying to sell on the comeback route, you're trying to sell that you're going deep. And so everybody's worried about you going deep if you're Nick Harbor. Well, you're taking those long legs, those long strides, and you've got to now break it down and stop, and then get turned all the way back around and head to the sideline back towards your quarterback. That's not easy. It seems, on a video game it's easy, but just the reality of that, it's not that easy. So route running is not literally just as simple as, hey, get out there and practice it, man. Yeah, that's some of it. But, going back to Jake Crane, too, he was like, man, Lenoris has got to be able to do more for them than the deep ball and the post. So I do agree with that.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think it's just as, like, simple as, come on, man, why can't you run routes better? Like, it's not there's a reason why the guys that look closer to looking like me and Chris, like short and, not massive, are playing the slot position, and they're running these little, short zig routes, out routes, slant routes. And then that your bigger guys are running downfield routes. It's easier to change direction when you have a short stride. So I thought all that was just a little bit enlightening, and kind of was one of those things where, like, yeah, I guess I kind of knew that, but I wasn't really thinking about it like that.
Yeah, and man, we've seen his progression too, though, from what he was as a freshman to now. Like, and he's worked really, really hard on it, to his credit. Not only with route running, but the hands, tracking the ball, understanding how to play receiver. When Nick got here, he was a big, fast guy who was still very much learning how to play receiver. And the exciting thing about him is he can get better in his last year, but we've seen that progression with him becoming a more, complete receiver. But there's a reality to it. If you're a guy that's 6'5", 240 pounds, that's a track sprinter type, your route tree is going to be a little bit different in the way that you run those routes. He's not going to be the way that he runs routes versus Jaden Sellers, for instance, is just going to be a lot different. But I thought he had a really good day out there. It was good to hear from him. It was kind of the full Nick Harbor experience. Everything from praying with Steven Garcia to making jokes about girlfriends and side chicks and all sorts of stuff. It was just the perfect encapsulation of Nick Harbor, I thought.
Yeah, and I'll say this one final thought on that, man. We've talked about this is not a new thought, but can you get a Nitro Tuggle, a DJ Black, a Donovan Murph, one of those other outside receivers? Let me throw a Jaden Gibson in there too, man. That's somebody nobody is talking about enough that, maybe doesn't make an impact at all. But if he's back like to 100%, if he's back to what he was before, do not count him out. If they could have another outside receiver almost take over kind of that X, like quote unquote number one receiver role, where you do have a little bit more diverse route tree, then you have Jaden and Mazio, of course, fighting it out for the slot. You're covered there. Like, I feel good about the slot position. That allows Nick not to quite have as much pressure to have as diverse. I mean, I still think you want to continue to expand that, but if you have all that going on that side of the field, Nick running goes and posts is maybe plenty to keep defenses honest. And you're going to hit some of them. We saw it last year, dude. That's the best thing the offense did in a very frustrating season, was to just say, we do not have to overthink this at times. If we can suck the corners and safeties up, we can throw the deep ball, we can throw the post at least a couple times a game, and we're probably going to have a shot to hit one of them. Because Nick, and that, I will say this too, man, Nick has gotten way better at tracking the football down the field. People will say now, well, why weren't you doing that when he was a freshman? He just wasn't comfortable doing it. Like, yes, he could run down the field, but he has worked very hard to improve his ability to track the football, to keep running, to go get it, and then to make the catch. And so that's why that has become a valuable part of this offense. If I'm Kendall Briles, I'm dialing that thing up as much as possible to keep everybody else honest, throughout the year. But, all right, dude, before we move forward, we got to pay a couple more bills. And tell you what, first, why don't you tell everybody about Rytech?
All right, let's do that. Let's tell everybody about our friends over at Rytech. They're a locally owned electrical company based right here in the Midlands, over in Lexington, founded by Steven, our guy, back in 2007. They serve Lexington, Columbia, and all around the Midlands. 4.9 stars on over 400 Google reviews, and they do residential and commercial electrical work exclusively. A few quick things to know. Every electrician on the Rytech team is a direct Rytech employee. No subcontractors. So when you get somebody to come out to your home or your business to give you a quote, to tell them what's going on, whether it's a new install, whether it's a problem that you're having, you are going to get somebody to come back out to fix it who is a Rytech employee. They're not passing it off to a company or to people that you don't know. They're going to tell you the price before you touch a single wire, and they back every repair with a 1-year parts and labor guarantee. So if you got flickering lights, dead outlets, tripping breakers, panel upgrades, whatever it is, give Rytech a call. It's 803-303-8274. A real person's going to pick up. Tell them that Gamecock Central sent you.
All right, guys, and let me also tell everybody about our friends at Zen AI. We've been telling you about them, Chris, the last couple of weeks, and this is actually a new way for, if you've been wanting to get into the podcast game, Zen AI is the home of what they're calling vibecasting. It's a new way to capture and share your conversations, just like you may have heard about the word vibe coding, which is where you take apps like Claude, Cowork, and Lovable, and it's made it possible for anybody, if you don't have coding skills, to just turn around and and take a big idea and turn it into an app. Well, this is basically like that, but for podcasts, for reels, for TikToks, all those different things maybe you want to get into, but you do not have the production skills for. ZenAI right now is paying new Vibecasters to create their first Vibecast. You can create a sports cast about your favorite team with Vibecasting, and then you're going to get paid to do it. You can Vibecast live as it happens, or you can record your analysis after. Basically, you just come and bring your ideas, bring your talent, bring your ability, bring your voice, and then you let ZenAI do the rest and do all the production on the back end for you. You see it right there on the screen if you're on the video version. It is Zen.ai. Head on over there. They are, last I checked, still in beta mode. So if you put in your email address, that's going to put you on a wait list, and then they will contact you at a later date. Chris, how about our friends at Atsko?
Yeah, we'll tell people about Atsko as well. That's ATSKO.com. Our guy Lee Riles running the show over there. Basically, let's just boil it down to this. If you're an outdoorsman, you need to go check out Atsko, ATSKO.com. They have a variety of hunting, waterproofing products, plus personal care like skin protection, odor control, shampoos, sun protection, products for sensitive skin, and even products for your animals. They have the UV control, odor control, laundry care, and outdoor gear products, plus things to keep you dry when you're out in the elements. Everything from gun cleaning rods to repair all to camo vests, bowstring wax, all sorts of stuff over at Atsko. If you're an outdoors person, go check them out. See if you can find something you like. They've been around forever. That's ATSKO.com.
Yeah, appreciate all those great sponsors being here with us here on GC Live. Chris, man, I want to start diving in here on the show. We've done this a little bit on the site, like I said. I want to start diving into this schedule a little bit because I do think it's kind of a weird schedule in that, don't you feel like we got into a little rhythm over the years of you just expected to see, Tennessee, Florida, Georgia, they're always on the schedule. And then we had to get used to, hey, those teams aren't going to always be on the schedule anymore. And now they're like, hey, they're back. Here they are. You're playing them again. And you're also playing 9 SEC games. And there's no cupcake at the end. You play Georgia at the end. And, oh, by the way, open with Mississippi State. You should beat them, but they're scary. And so it's just, I don't know, because the schedule got put together so late. Miami got the boot. You open with Kent State now. I don't know if we've spent as much time kind of diving into what this schedule truly is, which is why I've started to try to do that on Gamecock Central. And I do think you can kind of split this thing up, man. I don't want to get too deep into the year. We will do that on a later episode. But I've had a chance to dive into really what is like the first third of the season, the first 4 games. And I think you can start to maybe split these up into certain categories. And so right off the bat, you really have 2 games that with Kent State and Towson, are fans going to be happy at all if you don't just have 2 blowouts? Like I think you really are going to have to put up some points and just handle your business in these 2 games. Now, it does allow you a runway, I think. And you look at Kent State. I always think it's a fascinating when you first dive into a school and they're a non-Power 4. I mean, I haven't followed Kent State. If you followed Kent State, I haven't followed them at all. Okay, are they any good? Are they good for their level? Are they a scary team? Or are they not a scary team? Kent State, until last year, was basically one of the worst teams in the entire country. Absolutely terrible. Now, they do have a new coach. They made major strides last year. They're trying to take another step forward this year. Still, if this game is within, 2 or 3 touchdowns and the fourth quarter begins, you're going to have people pissed off in the stands like you just are. So this is incredibly different than what would have been, Miami, which has, I think, once again, probably on paper, one of the best rosters in the entire country. Even opening with Virginia Tech, who ends up firing their coach last year, playing in an NFL stadium. It's going to be a competitive game, right? You're playing a true Power 4 opponent. This is just different, dude. Like, you want to keep everybody healthy. You want to get some scores early on. You want to rotate a lot, and you want to really start to break in this offense. But from what I've seen from Kent State so far, I'll loop Towson in as well, man. You really just have some goals for those two games that go beyond just win the game, right?
Well, and I always think back to last year. You look at the SC State game last year, and that was a game that you won. And if South Carolina had won by 4 touchdowns, 5 touchdowns in that game, and just looked a lot better on offense, you're just going, okay, cool. Like, you kind of did what you're supposed to. Well, instead, you play that game if you're South Carolina and you don't look very good. Like, frankly, you struggle. And I know from what my eyes saw, you were a little bit more vanilla offensively, but you should be able to line up against, no disrespect to SC State or any of these other teams. You got to be able to go line up and look better offensively. And I just put my foot in my mouth. I said, win the game. They won 38-10. So they did win by 4 touchdowns. But, you had a punt return touchdown there from Bakari Swain. You just didn't look very good offensively in that game, especially when you've got Lenoris back and you've rebuilt your offensive line and you've got Kendall Briles at the helm and you have a new O-line coach. You just want to go in these first couple weeks not having to start with a Power 4 opponent in Miami who was a college football playoff team last year. And you just want to go out there and be able to run your offense and just dominate an opponent, right? Like, that's what people want to see. Doesn't necessarily mean anything for the long haul of the schedule or even the game 3 against Mississippi State. But I think that's what fans want to see is go put a bunch of yards up, go put a bunch of points up. And you brought this up earlier this week, Wes. Frankly, have an opportunity in the second half to go play some young players and keep your guys fresh for the onslaught of a schedule that's going to be coming.
Yeah, so, all right, those first two, they follow that trend, that want, that need. Hey, win the game, but win it early, win it handily. Get the guys on the field, get the young guys out there. In a perfect world, Cutter Woods plays the fourth quarter, and, you're moving on. Then you get through those first two. You have what will either be the most forgotten game of the season or the most important game of the season. Mississippi State coming to your place. If you take care of Mississippi State, if you beat Mississippi State, nobody on the planet cares. You know what I'm saying? No, you're not leading Sports Center. You're not, nobody. Oh, South Carolina beat Mississippi State. If you lose to Mississippi State to open the year in SEC play, all of a sudden everybody is panicking on the Insiders Forum on Gamecock Central. So this can either be the most important game of the year, you actually hope it's not, or a game where you say, we took care of business. This team is dangerous, dude, because 1, they come in with nothing to lose. 2, you have not been tested yet at that point if you're South Carolina. And 3, college football is still all about dudes. It's about playmakers. It's about difference makers. And this kid, Kamario Taylor, comes in with the potential to be the next big stud in the SEC. Now, is he ready to be that? Is he going to be that? I don't know. He's still got to take that leap. But what I saw out of him in his brief time last year as he started to take over as their quarterback, he's the dude now. They're handing him the reins to this Jeff Lebby high-octane style of offense, which, by the way, he's Kendall Briles' brother-in-law. 2 identical offenses in scheme in terms of background, for the most part. They're the Spider-Man meme staring and pointing at each other right now. If you're not ready for this game, then it is going to be, I don't want to say it's going to be ugly like, you're going to lose the game. I'm saying you will find yourself in a dogfight because we saw Mississippi State, which they should be better than they were last year, in my opinion. We saw last year's Mississippi State team really should have beat Florida, should have beat Texas, should have beat Tennessee. So, I'm not saying South Carolina can't blow them out. Anybody saying, South Carolina should blow them out, or it's that's the same as a loss if they don't blow them out. I don't buy that thinking at all. We know that's not how football works, especially early in the season We know South Carolina has a track record of starting their years slow and getting better as the year progresses. I just can't put into words how important of an early test this will be for South Carolina when you consider how this schedule will ramp up as the year goes on.
Yeah, and that's the key, right? If you lose to Mississippi State, it's not, well, the season's in the tank. We've seen this movie several times where South Carolina loses to a team that maybe they're not supposed to, go beat a team or teams that they maybe were not favored to beat, right? The key for South Carolina, the goal is, can you get in range to make the playoff this year? That's everybody's goal nowadays. It should be the goal here at South Carolina. And if you're going to do that, playing this schedule, a 9-game SEC schedule plus Clemson, you got to have some margin for error. You have to have some wiggle room. You got to have that buffer. And a team, you don't want to make the Mississippi State game your kind of mulligan, so to speak, or Mississippi State and Kentucky, right? Without getting too far ahead, if you're South Carolina, beating Mississippi State, having a chance to ramp up to Mississippi State and going to beat them, it makes you 3-0. It gives you an opportunity to put your best foot forward in the front half of the season, which from a schedule standpoint is more manageable, is easier, frankly, than the back half of the schedule. And it allows you to use up that buffer in the second half of the season. So that's why this game is so important. But you're right, it is going to be a challenge. It's a team that, Mississippi State didn't win an SEC game in 2024. I think they were 2-10 overall. Last year, they took a big step forward, not necessarily from a record standpoint, but they were a problem for teams. Just ask some of those teams that they almost beat, if they had fun during that game. They did not. And so you don't, if you're South Carolina, you don't want to let this one get away. It's a tough offense to defend. It's a quarterback in Kamario Taylor that can make things very difficult on you.
Tennessee went to overtime, right? Texas went to overtime. Florida is the one where Mississippi State's driving to kick the game-winning field goal, and I think batted pass interception or big man interception.
Lost by four to Georgia.
Did they really?
Yeah, that's wrong. I was
about to say, I don't think that was the case.
I was looking at the wrong schedule.
But beat Arizona State, who was preseason top 25 after being really, really good the year before. My thing is this with those type of games, Chris. There's so many variances and variables that can affect a game. If you're Texas, if you're Tennessee, if you're Florida, you are one bad bounce from losing those games. You know what I'm saying? You only control so much. Yes, Texas won the game, but what if a guy gets a hand up and bats down a pass that went for a key first down or touchdown? You know what I'm saying? You leave so much to chance when you get in those tight ball games. A lot of tight games, there is a huge luck factor. So you just don't want to get yourself. You want to have enough margin, enough buffer that if you have a couple bad luck plays, you still win the game. That only puts Mississippi State in striking distance as opposed to putting them, oh crap, where we have the ball with 3 minutes to go and have to drive to win this game. And now a tipped pass could mean game over. It gets tipped to the opponent and there you go. So I think that's why it's imperative not only to obviously try to win that game, but try to be ready to play well enough early in the year that it's not going to come down to, the luck of the draw, basically. And as Luke says, they bring in Zach Arnett, who has a scheme and has a history that is a track record of doing more with less. And I think that's what you have to do at Mississippi State. You're not going to be a Georgia defense. You're not going to be, a loaded Texas defense more than likely. But Mississippi State over the years has put together some salty defenses where they have a little bit different scheme. It's that what is it? The 335 that's from New Mexico State. Isn't that the roots of?
Long. Yeah.
Yeah. It is a pain to go against. I think.
Yep.
They got some good linebackers. Replace a lot on the defensive line. I think they bring back a good bit of their secondary. So they will take a step forward, I think, under Zach Arnett, just because the dude can coach. So scary game there. All right, Chris, let's move it forward before we get out of here. So you got the 2 cupcakes to start. You got your SEC home, dangerous, scary. You're going to be favored. You need to win it game against Mississippi State. Then you have what will be what people call, whether right or wrong, your first true test of the season. Because, again, I don't think they're going to give you credit. What if Mississippi State is just way better than they were last year? But by week 3, we don't know that yet. You know what I'm saying? Nobody's going to give you credit, even if that ends up being a big win. Even if Alabama's not that good, people will call Alabama your first big test of the year because it's in Tuscaloosa. They're Alabama. And you've been heavy underdogs against them 2 years in a row, yet arguably coulda, woulda, shoulda won either or both of those games. With Alabama, Chris, 2 things caught my eye diving into them. 1, we don't know who their quarterback's going to be. So that automatically puts you in a question mark situation if you're Alabama, when you're in a league where most of these teams at this point have a pretty good idea of who their signal caller is going to be.
That's a big question. Is it going to be Keelan Russell, who's the young former 5-star? Is it going to be Austin Mack, who was at Washington with Kalen DeBoer and Ryan Grubb and transferred in, followed them to Alabama, and is a big 6'6", 230-pound kid who's been around college football a while, but still kind of inexperienced? And Nick Saban, talked up Austin Mack, kind of given some of his analysis about the Alabama program. Of course, people are going to ask him about, every SEC team, but especially Alabama, given his history there. And so that's, after losing Ty Simpson, who was, I think, Wes, you were bringing this up the other day, and I agree, probably underappreciated for what he did last year compared to how little of a run game that they had. That's another big question with Alabama, I think. You lead with who's the trigger man, who's the quarterback. We don't really know yet. I tend to think maybe Mac, just because he's a little more experienced. He knows this offense a little better, but I actually don't know at all. I have no inside information. If you made me guess, maybe that's it. But they're going to pick a guy, and then can they get better running the football? They rebuilt this offensive line, brought in a new offensive line coach. They didn't run the ball well at all in Columbia last year and still won the game.
Or anywhere.
Yeah. Didn't really run it at all. And so there's a couple big questions for them. Not even to talk about the rest of the team, defensively, special teams, big questions on offense for them that they need to answer.
So you think Mac?
What's that?
You think Mac?
Am I wrong? You think Russell?
I don't know. I just number 2 quarterback in the these guys are playing earlier and earlier, dude.
I could be totally wrong. And admittedly, I haven't even asked any of our Bama guys or read a lot of insider reports from the On3 Bama site. I really don't know. I was just kind of going off of.
Now, yeah. Mac was injured, not serious, but he didn't really play much during the spring game. Russell went off during the spring game. So that's kind of a little bit. I know spring game doesn't really matter, but it's a little bit what I'm going off of. And I just think the dynamic ability, if they're trying to get the run game going, quickest way to fix that. We saw this with South Carolina 2 seasons ago. If you have a quarterback who can run the ball, opens up so much else in the run game. Also, man, I'll say this on their run game. There's a small part of me, deep down, I do pull for our boy D1 Daniel Hill. Followed his recruitment so closely. South Carolina heavily involved there. Some guys, for whatever reason, man, and not that I even know him or have kept in touch with him, I haven't, but something about that kid I've just always pulled for him. Felt like he was a good dude. And, started to get more carries last year, needed more room to run. So have they fixed the O-line with a new coach? Chris, not the Bama of old when it comes to recruiting. Like they brought some guys in the portal. They got outbid by some teams. They got one of their running backs basically stolen from them, who was coming to them in Hollywood Smothers, goes to Texas, those deep pockets at UT. So I don't know, man. It just feels different. Like Alabama's going to be talented. I don't want to say always will be. Most of the time they will be. It does not feel to me like there is that just huge divide anymore when you look at Alabama's talent. I'm wondering too, Chris, has it caught up to Georgia? Has it started to catch up to Georgia? And I know they won the SEC. I know they're now the favorite this year. And I know that they made college football playoff last year. Has it caught up to them that they have remained in the, we're only going to pay you once you prove you can do it here in Athens? That's their MO, right? Not we're going to pay you to come here. We're going to pay you once you prove. Has that lowered the upside, the ceiling of their roster compared to what it was 3, 4, 5 years ago? Like it feels a little bit different. We'll get into that Georgia game later on in a different show, but I don't know, man. I just don't know if those rosters, I don't know if they scare you as an opponent the way they did 5 years ago.
I think it's affected everybody's depth too. You know, like typically when you would look at the teams that were so much better, head and shoulders better than the rest of the league, not only were their starters amazing. Remember those graphics that would go around and literally every player on the field from Bama was an NFL draft pick, you know, like both sides of the ball. But then they would also just have insane depth. And I feel like everybody, including even the Blue Bloods, get hit with that sometimes. But yeah, we've seen that at Bama. It's a different ball game in terms of recruiting for them. Still very talented. Wes, one thing, and you know, I don't like to stir up quarterback controversies when there's not one. There's a little bit, not a controversy, but a question there. I wonder, and I was kind of going back. Another reason I picked Mac is just a couple little things that Kalen DeBoer said about his experience. Their early season schedule, little bit more manageable. ECU at Kentucky, year one new coach. Now, I would say Florida State lost that game last year. They play Florida State. South Carolina is their second SEC game. Do we see a situation where it's Mac because of the experience early, and then if they're not firing on all cylinders, boom, here comes Russell? Could South Carolina game be a good game for that? Maybe. Wouldn't be shocked by that.
All right, guys. Hey, we're out of time. Luke, I'm going to just finish the week on this comment from you, man. Appreciate you, dude. Love you too, man. He says he loves the show. Appreciate you, Luke. Hey, come check us out on Gamecock Central, man. Hopefully you already are. I believe I recognize that name, so hopefully you're already on there. But if not, come check us out. Come say what's up on the Insiders Forum. And anybody else who is on the show but not a subscriber, we would love to have you through the journey of the college football season that is the Gamecocks. We'll see if they can surprise this year. We're going to head off into the weekend, though. Thank you guys for hanging out with us here on Friday. Garnet Yardbird, thank you as well for hopping on. Everybody else, Austin, Jeremy, everybody in the comments, y'all are great. Y'all are awesome. Tell your friends. And pretty soon we will get out a schedule for what our plan will be during the season. For those who have been here for the long haul, you know, summer is a little bit more, hey, we're going to hop on here and there when we can. Once this thing ramps up, we will absolutely have reaction shows every week. We'll have a designated preview show every week, maybe something there in between, in addition to the shows that Jack will be doing. And we're going to have some cross-promotion with Jamie and JC and all those guys with Inside the Gamecocks as well. We'll be able to we will make appearances on their show. They can make appearances on our show. Really excited. We haven't kind of completely had a chance to dive into what exactly that will look like, but excited for some really fun things we can do with that. So looking forward to really, truly getting this thing kicked off here soon as South Carolina begins their preseason. Before we know it, we'll be talking about game week, South Carolina, Kent State. All right, for Chris, I'm Wes. Thank y'all again. Y'all have a great weekend, and we'll see you very, very soon.